Here I have a bunch of books that cover the topic of triad pairs or hexatonics. So I'm gonna compare these books. It's not necessarily which book is best, it's just different takes on the idea of combining two triads. So triad pairs or hexatonics, also same thing. Some people call it triad coupling. So I have talked about this before and I will link to all my previous videos. But in this video, I wanted to take a look at these books and see how they differ in this subject. So let's get started, shall we? First off, let's take a look at the book Hexatonics by Bergonzi, one of my favorite jazz authors or method book authors. And this is volume 7 of his series, Inside Improvisation, and it covers hexatonics. So what do we mean by this? So it's taking two triads that don't share the same note and combining them. So for the most common triad pairing is two major triads a whole step apart. So C major, D major. So all I'm doing is playing a C major triad, D major triad, then continuing with the inversions. You can create all these kind of different patterns. So why are we doing this? It's just another improvisational device that you can use instead of just running scales. And it creates a sound. I like to think of these things as sounds. It's a melodic structure, I guess, that you can use over certain chords. So we'll look at which triad pairings work over which chords later on. So this book starts with this triad pairing, two major triads, a whole step apart. And the first pattern goes like this. So that's a 4-note pattern, right? It's not a book for guitarists, so it doesn't have any guitar instructions, but you have to figure out your own fingerings. So this is a C and a D triad, so it could work over a D, over a C, which creates kind of a Lydian sound, right? If you think of the C as the root. So it could also work over any Lydian chord, like a C major, sharp 11 perhaps. In this case, you can actually play both the triads, C triad, D triad. So that's a polychord, which is not as common. And it wouldn't really work with C over D because you get that flat 9 interval. But it could also be a C over D slash chord. You can also think of it that those two triads are found in G major, which means that the modes of G major, these two triads are going to work over any chord, any mode from G major, as long as you're considering the void notes. So for example, it could work over A minor. Or C Lydian, as I said. But it's also from G melodic minor. So maybe a G melodic minor chord. Then there are just endless variations of patterns that you can combine these two triads with. And then there's a list of different triad coupling combinations. So D over C, B minor over C, B over C, B augmented over C augmented, F sharp over C. So what we mean by triads here are major triads, minor triads, augmented and diminished. That's what we mean by a triad. So we're not including sus structures or any other 3-note combinations, even though some people might call that triads as well. But what we're doing here is major, minor, augmented, and diminished. So I guess you could call it generic triads. So there's a whole list of combinations like that. And then it's just page after page of combination of how you can combine the two triads. So I'll just play a few for you so you get an idea. That's another combination, and then you could go down the opposite way. Here's another one. So I'm not worrying about fingerings now. I'm just trying to find the triads and play them. It's more about fretboard and harmony awareness than technique. I can always work on the fingerings later. Right now, I'm just trying to make sure that I play these sequences and patterns correctly. It doesn't have to be all the notes of a triad before you move on to the next. You could take just 2 notes from a triad and 2 notes from the next. 2 from the C triad. So there are actually, let's see here, 72 different patterns. So that gives you plenty of work to do. Then it's all kind of laid out in every key. Some people have an issue with that. They think that this book could have been a lot more inexpensive and not as comprehensive if he'd just written out in one key and then it's assumed that you know how to transpose yourself. I've heard people say that they get paid per page. That's why they do this, but I'm not sure about that. But I think it's nice to have it kind of all written out in every key, because then I can write in my fingerings and make sure that I go through all the keys. Then there are tunes that you can press along with. Then the next triad coupling is B minor over C. So B minor over C gives you, instead of this, you get this, right? That's a B minor triad, C triad. So it's 1 note different. So let's listen to that over a C major. The next triad coupling is C and B triad combined. So that could, for example, work over a B over C. So some kind of major 7, sharp 9. Then there is this fantastic concept in this book, which he calls practice grids. So the idea is to always start from a note. So if I take, for example, a C major or C Lydian sound. And then I go up chromatically. Half steps. I want to create a melodic line that goes contrary to the chord movement, which means that I'm going to start my triad pairing pattern from that note, but it's not going to be the same as before, right? Because we end up with this problem that if I play this over the C, then it's next chord, and the next chord. I'm just moving the same finger shapes without being aware of each note. So in order to practice how to go beyond that problem, you do this. So let's say I have these chords, C major. So I'm actually going to play like a D over C, E flat over D flat, E over D, F over E flat. So for the first chord, I'm going to start here, and then here, and then I'm going to start on A, and I find the closest note, which is A for the next one. So C is the first starting note. Then I'm going to start on B flat. The closest note going down is A, and the closest note to the next is also A. So C and D triad. Right, so I can't move the same pattern. It's going to be different every time, right? Obviously, you want to keep going. I'm just giving you 4 bars for the sake of time, but you want to go through all the keys, and you can do it slower, and you can do 2 bars each if it's too fast. So that's a really good exercise, and if you're not used to that, that could be a really, really good thing to practice to get away from just moving the same finger shapes. All right, so let's take a look at this book, Triad Pairs for Jazz. It's a little bit different take on it. It starts with just going through the different scales and finding out exactly what the combinations of triads that you can find in any scale. And he takes pretty far, goes to the harmonic major scale and Byzantine and double harmonic scale. I'm not sure about that. So the combination that Gary Campbell, the author of this book, comes up with is C and a whole step up, which is D, or C and a whole step down, which is B flat, C and a half step up, D flat, right? C and B, half step down, and then C and F sharp. Those are the triad combinations that he'll end up with. And then you can do minor triads, same thing, and diminished and augmented, and then any combination. So major and minor, major and diminished. So I'll show you what I mean. He also talks about something what he calls linking triads. So instead of going, so I'm starting on C and then D, he'll find the closest voice leading, which is actually this note. Right, so from the G to the F sharp. And then you keep going like that. Let me do that again. So you can make like a little loop. with two triads using this linking technique. So that's a C and D triad, and then just try the different variations. So same thing, but this time a whole step down, so C and B flat. And then C and B, which is a half step down. That was terrible fingering. And then C and D flat. And lastly, C and F sharp. So tritone away. This could be from symmetrical diminished, right? So that works over F sharp over C. And remember, there could be C minor and F sharp minor. It's also from C half whole. So the minor are the little bit weaker, the major triads are the strongest, I think. So you can make a little loop with each of the chord types. D over C, B flat over C, B over C, D flat over C, and F sharp over C. You have to also figure out what other chords these work over. For example, as I said, the C and D could be derived from G melodic minor, right? There's a C major triad and a D major triad in G melodic minor. So any of the modes from G melodic minor, such as F sharp altered, C and D works. But it doesn't give you a note which you kind of need, which is that B flat. So I like to change when I use melodic minor triad pairing. I like to do a major and an augmented. So instead of B flat, it's B flat aug. That's a great triad pairing for the melodic minor sounds. Could be a C sharp 11. It's great, great sound. Another combination I really like is C major and D diminished, which is derived from the harmonic major scale. So I don't have time to go through all the combinations, but this book, Triad Pairs, shows you exactly what all the different triad pairings work, what kind of chords they work over and all that stuff. He also does these kind of thing with 2 octaves. So triad pair link with link. So you can create kind of like arpeggios, and I made a video which I called creating arpeggios with triads or something like that. I'll link to it. So I'm playing the same triads an octave higher. He also does this thing where he combines the link with a chromatic note. Like that. So there's tons of stuff in there. Another book I want to talk about that I've also talked about this in the previous lesson, I will link to all the lessons that I'm mentioning. So if you saw that, you've already seen this. But this book, Modern Jazz Concepts by Sid Jacobs, one of my instructors back in the day at Musicians Institute, talks about triads, but it's just one chapter of this book. It's not a book only about triads, but there's one chapter called Triad Pairs. But he talks about them as chords. They're lines too. That's nice. But he talks about them as chords. So let's say we have F and G triads. I can play them as a scale too, right? Like you could play them notes in order. So it's like a C major scale with no E, or F Lydian, or however you want to think of it. It's like I don't have the note E because it's a 6-note scale, a hexatonic scale. C major is a 7-note scale, and the only note we're not playing is the E. So if I play those notes on the bottom string, I get that. And then I take the triads, G, F, G, F, G, F, and combine that with those bass notes, I get different chords. That starts over. So I get a G over F, F over G, G over A, F over B, which is interesting, and G over C, and F over D, which is a D minor 7. That just blew my mind when I've never thought of it like that you can create all these chords with triad pairs. And imagine taking all these combinations of triads that I've talked about and mentioned. That's a lot of work. So let's just, for fun, let's take C and F sharp. So F sharp, G, A sharp, C, C sharp, E, F sharp. That's the scale. If I play the notes in order, and then maybe C, F sharp, C, F sharp. Sounds kind of like, that reminds me of Star Wars. Is there somewhere in Star Wars where they have the sound? So C over F sharp, F sharp over G, C over A sharp, F sharp over C, and then C over C sharp, and F sharp over E. Another thing he does is like taking this note on top instead. Or you can think of it like this. Let's say we take the F triad. start with a note from the other triad above it. So G, F triad, B, F triad, D, F triad. Of course, you could do 2 octaves. I love that sound. Jesse Von Ruler plays that all the time. Then there's this book, Line Games, where he talks about hexatonics, but here he talks about them as scales rather than combining 2 triads. So instead of taking 2 triads, he takes a 7-note scale, like C major, and removes a note. So if you have a C pentatonic compared to a C major scale, the 2 notes that are in the major scale and not a pentatonic are F and B. So if I remove the F, for example, I get this. Which is, I've actually eliminated a void note, so that works great, for example, over A minor. You hear people play this stuff all the time. I'm just skipping the F. Or you can remove the other note, the B. Then you get a great sound over D minor. And he does this with melodic minor as well. So for example, you can take A flat melodic minor and remove the D flat and you get this. So it's like a G altered. Without the D flat, right? So I've also made a video about that when I got that book. I was so excited about that, I made a video, so I'll link to that as well. I also want to mention this book, Creative Chordal Harmony for Guitar by Mick, Goodrick and Tim Miller. Here they take this idea way further. So instead of just thinking of generic triads, they take all the other 3-note combinations that you can come up with. So sus structures and different triads that are not major or minor, but like shell voicings. So I've also made a video where I go over that. I've talked about that book in several videos. So I just wanted to kind of give you so many different takes on the idea of triad pairing and inspire you, so you might want to get these books if you want to study it more. So it would take a very long time to go through all these. And again, the idea is not to just think of them as fast licks or whatever that you're going to throw in. It's more like exploring the fretboard and the different harmonies that you can create with these triads and developing a better melodic and harmonic awareness. That's kind of what I'm doing with this. So that's the point of this, I think. But of course you can come up with fast licks and flashy licks while using these triads and all that. And yeah, have fun with it. And thanks for your time and attention. And I shall see you next time.